Good afternoon, every fur. Welcome back to Furcation Virtual. I'm Jasper Foxx, and I'm joined by Anthropuppy.
Hello.
We are running a panel called So You Want to Run a Furrycon to hopefully give you a deep insight into the engine of running a furry event. So I think, first of all, the first rule that we want to give you is don't! Just kidding. No, seriously, if you are interested in running a furry convention, we're here to give you a few pointers of everything that we've learned from Furcation along the journey of starting in 2016 or 2015, the year that never was, and the progression up to where we are now, essentially. So there's been a lot of discussion on Twitter and on various other platforms about how do you actually go about running a furry convention? How do you go about doing it? So I thought we'll take this opportunity to give you some insight as to what the thought processes were, how we decided what we were doing with Furcation, and hopefully maybe give you some inspiration to either run your own furry event, furry meet, furry con. Most of this is transposable across a lot of the different events run in furry today. So first and foremost, the first thing you want to look at is your market. So with the market, what I mean by that is there actually even call for a new event? So back when we were setting this up in 2015, the original conventions available at that time in the UK, you had ScotiaCon and you had Confuzzled. So there was a gap in the market at that point for us that we thought, well, you know, maybe something a bit more southwest, a bit further away. And the other thing we wanted to look at doing was to make a cheaper event. A lot of people had said that some conventions are expensive to go to. Now, that's not to say that that's bad. At the end of the day, some conventions may cost more than others. The reason for that is they may have different overheads, they may have different venue requirements, they may have to get specialist equipment in. But at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is give you, our attendees, the best time that you can when you come away for us for a weekend. So what you need to ideally identify is you need to look at, the convention format itself. It's tried and tested a lot, not just in the UK, but across the world, where most of them take place in a hotel or a conference centre. With Furcation, we wanted to do something outside of the box. We wanted to give it a unique selling point. So for us, the idea of setting it on a holiday park was the logical choice for that. It was something different where we could still get all of you fuzzies together. Offers a great opportunity. Everyone has effectively their own party suite with the caravans. So for us, it was a bit of a no-brainer. Plus, the accommodation is usually very cheap, especially at the time of year that we're running because we're off-season. So once you've actually got your market nailed down and you know what you're looking to achieve, the next part is you need to start searching for your venue. So you need to start factoring in a lot of things straight away. So for example, for a startup event, taking a hotel that will have maybe 1,000 spaces isn't really going to work very well for your first event. So start it small. So try and find a smaller venue, just a smaller hotel that maybe has a maximum capacity of, say, 100 or 150. And that would be a great base to start with. You've got to walk first before you can run. When you're approaching said venues, you want to actually have good discussions with them about what you're bringing to them. They don't want any surprises on the day. So making sure that they are LGBTQ+ friendly is a big start because it doesn't really affect a lot of venues, but there are some venues that we've actually already had correspondence with who are, oh, we have a very family-friendly image and we're not sure that's the sort of event we'd like. It's horses for courses, as they say. What you want to make sure is that the venue that you're going to work with want you there and are willing to accommodate you and actually work alongside you. As many of you have seen with John Fowler's and Furcation, we've got a fantastic relationship between us. John Fowler's love Furcation. We always love going back to John Fowler's. They're very accommodating, very welcoming. They take their feedback seriously, so for us it's a no-brainer. They're the best place for us to be right now. The next thing you want to work out is whether you actually want to be selling your accommodation yourself or whether you want to be referring it on to your venue to sell. So there's, again, tried and tested methods and different formulas for different conventions. So I know, for example, a lot of the American conventions and European conventions, you buy your attendance ticket from the venue, from the convention. They give you a reference code which you then go to the venue with in order to get your accommodation, or then you potentially could look at overflow accommodation or day tickets to the event. But some venues will require you to do the ticket sales yourself in full, including accommodation. Now, there's pros and cons to that. The pros of doing it yourself, you can manage the stock yourself, so you've got good full tracking of your attendance levels, who's in what room, so that makes things easy. You can also, if someone needs to switch room, that's all done internally within your convention system, so room switches and moving people around is actually quite easy. Cons of doing it yourself, all transactions will account towards your business turnover, which will change how much tax you'll be paying to HMRC. Now, we'll touch on the legal sides of the taxation shortly, but yeah, it has a big significant difference once you start getting turnovers. For example, one of the things that Furcation will need to start looking at doing due to our turnover is we now need to look at VAT registration. So that is something that will be coming through as we're just nudging that threshold. We'll come on to that a bit further later on. But pros of letting the venue do the accommodation, it takes all the work away from the convention itself. So all you're worried about is your attendees buying tickets to your event. After that, all your attendees are dealing with the venue, so it takes that part of the registration system away from you and puts that to your venue. The cons of letting the venue do the accommodation, you have no control of the stock, so you won't realistically, you'll have your numbers from your ticket sales, but you may not know your accommodation sales. Depends how good a relationship you've got with the venue and whether they'll release those figures to you. The other part of that is if there's any room changes, then that's on the venue to deal with, and you may find that your attendees will struggle with moving from one room to another. So there's various different ways of doing things, and there's, as we're now about to come on to, a lot of legal minefields that you can fall into. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Anthropuppy sat next to me. The reason being, Anthropuppy is our vice chairman and company secretary. He takes care of all of our accounts. He takes care of all our legal affairs. So he's probably better qualified than me to run you through this next section.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go on to that part of it. So basically, if you are thinking of running a convention, what the things I would recommend are, I would recommend you register as a company at a company's house. This you'll need to do for a number of reasons, but if you register as a limited company, that gives you protection in the way of if you set it up, and to do that you need a minimum of 2 people, which will be 2 directors. You do need 2 directors and a secretary to be the minimum of a limited company, but one of those directors can be also the secretary. So you can just have 2 directors, one of those with the secretary as well, and that will be the minimum you would need to set it up. Once you've set up your limited company, there's various ways of setting up the company itself. What I would recommend is to go for a limited company by guarantee. Basically, that means that if you have any problems, you'll need to look at this on the company's house site yourself. There's a lot of information available there. But if you set it up as a limited company by guarantee, that means you can, if there's any problems with the company or you have any difficulties, you are limited to liability that you will have to pay if the company has problems. So it will give you a little bit of protection in that way. So that's the company registration, which I would always recommend to do. The second thing to think about, if you will be handling personal data, people's names, addresses, etc. So we would recommend registering with the ICO. That is the organisation which governs data protection, GDPR, data registration, and how you keep and look after your data, etc. If you register with the ICO, that can also give you protection if you have any problems with the with your data registration. They can help with that also, but if you don't register with the ICO, you are still liable under the ICO for your data if any problems happen. So it'd be better to be registered with the ICO than not, because if you have any problems with it, they will be able to help you. If you don't register, they can still prosecute you if you have data breaches, etc., depending on how serious it is. But if you do have that problem, if you're ICO registered, they can also help. So that's what we would also recommend as well. You would also need a company bank account. Obviously, you can have money coming in, money going out. You've got to pay people, people got to pay you, etc. We absolutely don't recommend using your personal accounts. For one thing, HMRC, who you will be paying your tax to if you make any profits, don't like this kind of thing either. And if you have a company bank account, it will give an indication to HMRC that when you do your account, that your business is properly governed, and they will be happy with that. So you need a bank account in a company name, whatever you think that company will be. You can choose that name. You can go and register it in Companies House, but just be aware, do a Companies House search first, because that name that you might think nobody else has may be taken. Easy search from Companies House, find out if that name is free. If it is, then register that one. So just as I touched on HMRC, you'll also need to register with them, because you will be paying tax. You'll be liable to tax on your profits if you make any, and at the current rate of tax for a company account, that would be around about 20% you'll be paying. So if you do make a lot of money at the end of the year, obviously you'll be putting that back into your business to improve it and make it better, and buy more things for the business and invest in it. But you would also be liable for your tax on any profit you make for each year. So when you do, if you are spending money, you've got to make sure at the end of the year you have that money available to pay your tax bill if you have any tax to pay. So that's one thing to look out for. So registration with HMRC as well. So that will be for the main things you need to set up. From there, you may like to look at insurances. So you'll certainly need something like public liability insurance for your event, but also make sure that whatever venue you choose, they also may be covered under their public liability insurance as well. So liaise with your venue to find out what kind of public liability you and them require for your event to go ahead, and make sure you've got that in place for each event. And if you, one thing that we recommend as well is another type of insurance, which is event cancellation insurance. So you can imagine if you've sold all these tickets, and then you've got all this money in, you've spent out on hiring your venue, invested in your event, and then if your event gets cancelled for any reason, the venue has a problem, or there's any other problems, you may be liable to refund all your tickets if it doesn't go ahead. Now, if you've sold tickets and then you've invested more money, that money into your event, you might not have the money available to refund your tickets, so you'll have a problem. So event cancellation insurance, if you have that in place, that will cover, you'll have to look into each individual insurance policy, but that will then cover you for any losses or repaying your attendees if your event gets cancelled and they require a refund. So that is certainly recommended for each event that you hold. And obviously, to save you a lot of money, as Furcation works as well. We work on volunteers. So it's a good idea to have volunteers in place that can help you with your event. And obviously because they're not being paid, if they were being paid, you would have to charge quite a lot for your tickets if you have to factor that in. But if you can have people volunteering for your event to come and work for you, that will keep your costs down for quite a lot, and that then can keep your ticket prices down. So you can encourage more people to come to your event. Yeah, volunteers, a good volunteer base is a very good thing when running a furry event. And touching on volunteers, it's not just volunteers at the events. I'll say with Furcation, we have volunteers for web development, websites, registration system, on-site data handling, security teams, obviously SIA approved people, then that would be at your event itself, at your physical event, medical teams, welfare teams, and anything from there up to things like fire marshals in basic security around your event at the time. So volunteers are a great asset for an event. So basically that would be sort of what you need, basics for running an event sort of legal-wise. But one thing we will touch on as well is data handling. So data handling between other events, etc. So I'll pass you back to Jasper for a little bit on data handling.
Okay, so for your attendees, you're going to need in place a privacy policy, data protection policy, and data retention policy. These are three very important things that let your attendees know exactly what you are doing with their data. Now, there's always rumors about data sharing between different meets and conventions. I can personally say myself, it's not common. And the reason it's not common is sometimes it's very illegal. The reason for this is if we, for example, wanted to share data of an attendee onto another event, say, I don't know, we've banned them for some reason and we feel that that reason needs to be communicated. If our privacy policy and our data protection policies do not state that we will share that data with the other events, and we do not have signed data protection sharing agreements with us and those other events, the person whose data that we have shared could actually come back to Furcation via the ICO earlier mentioned, and they can actually potentially get us prosecuted for the fact that we have leaked their data. GDPR, which is the new regulations, the General Data Protection Regulations, if you're wondering what that means, tie business hands very much in terms of what you can and can't do with data. The other things that this allows is things like mailing lists. Before, you may remember, if you added your email address to somewhere, you may just get automatically added to a mailing list. That is now illegal. You're not allowed to do that under GDPR. Everything now must be opt-in rather than opt-out. So that is a very significant part of this data protection process as well. So if you are looking at taking personal data, and by personal data we mean even something as simple as someone's name or date of birth, anything that can be used to identify a person should that information get into public domain, you need to make sure that you've got the adequate protection and controls in force to ensure that that data is not shared outside of your organization unless otherwise advised in your privacy policy. So with the privacy policy, if you've read the Furcation one, I'm sure most of you have just scrolled through it and clicked I agree.
Everybody does.
Everyone does. We all do it on websites. You will find that the only people that we share our data with is John Fowler Holidays, and the purpose for that is to make sure that we can book your accommodation on your behalf with John Fowler's, so when you turn up on site, they know which caravan you're in and which key to give you. They are the only place that we will ever share data with Furcation. So it's just making sure that you don't fall foul of the law. There is a lot of red tape out there. I'm also just going to bring up something that's come up in the Twitch chat. Dragon Vanin has advised, if in doubt, always speak with a tax professional or accountant regarding company formation. how to keep records, what you need to do to stay on the right side of the taxman and company's house. There are companies out there that can help you to form companies, and I'll hand over to Anthropup for that.
Yeah, that's one thing that I was going to also mention. When dealing with the HMRC, you can submit your accounts yourself. Now, I would only recommend doing that if you are absolutely 100% efficient with knowing what the HMRC is, what your tax liabilities are, and you've had experience of doing that before. If not, my prime recommendation would be hire an accountant. Get an accountant, get them to do your accounts, because if the HMRC are reasonably okay, if you make a mistake with your accounts, they will help you rectify it. They won't do your accounts for you, but if you do make a mistake, they will allow you to change that mistake and resubmit your accounts. If they think you've done it deliberately, or you have not enough knowledge to do those accounts, they can also prosecute you for that. So if in doubt at all whether you are confident at doing your accounts every year, you know what your tax liabilities are, and you know what you can claim against tax and what you can't claim against tax, my prime recommendation would be hire an accountant. Will probably cost you about 400 quid for the year, so it's not too much. And then if you do your books yourself, you can write up all your accounts and just have the accountant just check them. Costs you about £200. So, as I say, if you, I have quite a lot of experience in doing accounts, doing tax, etc. I know exactly what the HMRC do and don't require, and what I can put through as tax liabilities and not tax liabilities. I've been doing it for a number of years, so I'm quite proficient at that. So I do the accounts myself for Furcation. But also, one thing, if you do that, one other thing I would say is record keeping is a must. Now, the HMRC can do what's called an audit. They are random, and you may get one. You might be 6 years and you don't get one. You might never get one. You might get two, in a space of a few years. But they are random, and what the HMRC will do is they will scrupulously go through your accounts, make sure every penny is correct, and they will do an audit, and they will see exactly what is what and if you've done your accounts correctly. If not, I guess they can give you discretion and then say, well, this is incorrect, please change it. If there are too many mistakes, they may prosecute you for incorrect tax references or incorrect tax that you've said to them that you owe and you don't. And also, they can also claim back tax. If you do it wrong, they can give you a hell of a tax bill as well. So to avoid all that, if you're not absolutely confident at doing that, just hire an accountant, let them do it, and then it's out of your hands. So that's something to look into if you're not confident at doing the tax yourself.
Yeah, my favourite thing for that is if you've ever seen Black Books, the first ever episode of Black Books with Bernard Black trying to do his taxes. If you're like that, looking at the tax form, get an accountant. It will make your life so much easier.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you've now managed to burst through all of the red tape of setting up the company, getting all your accounts in order, and you're now ready to start getting your new convention or event advertised out to the wider world so that you can start getting people coming to your event. Advertising is key, and making the right impression first time is crucial. So Twitter and Facebook are usually good starts for advertising. You can also go to other conventions, events, and fur meets to flyer drop their event. However, not all events like that, so please do seek permission from that event organizer prior to doing that. It's one of those things, it's just a common courtesy, almost a gentleman's agreement between other events, that if you want to bring flyers and advertise at their event, seek permission from that event organizer first and have that in writing before you start doing your advertising drops. It's also worth building up a good rapport with your fellow conventions and events and their social media teams. And they can also help you with retweets to help advertise and cross-advertise your conventions. Just remember to reciprocate. It's all well and good if FluffyCon 5000 is retweeting all of your tweets, but if you're not retweeting theirs back, they may get a bit cross at that and may stop their end. So advertising is key, and making sure that you're seeking permission from the right people before advertising at their events is also critical. The next thing is also to be transparent. It's all well and good keeping most of your planning under wraps, but you need to be as transparent as possible with policies, communications, changes, and feedback that you've worked on, particularly anything that's been a talking point for your attendees. An event that can listen to good feedback and can work with attendees to make things better will always get better respect. There's a great song and an advert you may remember from the 2000s where Honda did a change on their diesel engines, and they did a song based on hate something, change something, make something better. That's pretty much a mantra I like to live by with Furcation. We do run regular feedback sessions at the event. We've had feedback forms for years. You can feedback via, we put out various Google Drive forms. We take feedback on email. Any feedback is good feedback, whether it's negative or positive, because if we don't know what's going wrong, we can't work to fix it. So we have to listen. We make these events for you, the attendees. So we absolutely have to listen to you as attendees, because if we're doing things wrong by your books, you ain't going to come to our event, and then our event is going to cease to exist. So we 100% have to listen and be transparent, be open, nothing behind closed doors, and make sure that your attendees know and feel that they are being listened to. The next step of that, actually, is also putting your ego aside. Now, this can be a difficult one for a lot of staff members, not just the event organizers, but a lot of staff members across these events as well. It's great to get the praise and credit, but don't let it get to your head. It's great that we've got volunteer teams that can help to run all of these wonderful events across the UK, globally, all around the world. There are these fantastic events, all supported by volunteers. We are only human. We can make mistakes. But what we need to make sure of is that, if you're putting the hard work in, you may not necessarily sometimes get the credit for it. But that's life as a volunteer on an event. Sometimes it's not just about having your name up in lights. It's just knowing that the work that you have done has made the attendees happy, has made the event run smoother. It's all about, at the end of the day, the experience that the attendees get at the event. A great line I was once told by a friend of mine is, nobody cares who fills up the water in the fursuit lounge, they only care that it's there. And that is a very important point to remember. Some of the staff you may also find can get possessive about their event. If someone is criticizing an event, it can be very difficult to not, you can be very protective of an event, and it can be very difficult to not snap or say, well, that's just the way it is. That's the worst attitude you can take. So it's making sure, again, that, all feedback that you take on is critical. Put your ego aside. Don't worry about your name being in lights. And at the end of the day, the actual convention isn't being run for you as a staff member or you as a chairman or a part of a team lead. The people we're running this for are the attendees, and we cannot lose sight of that. Okay, the next thing that we need to go on to is, as part of that, is inclusion. So at this point, I'll hand over to Anthropuppy.
Okay, yes. Okay, yeah, there we go. Basically, one thing to look at for your event is inclusion for everybody. So when looking at your venue, it's a good idea to take in things like accessibility, so that if you have any disabled people, people in wheelchairs, etc., who have limited mobility, etc. It's not just about looking at wheelchair access, etc. Is also things like how far are things apart for if anybody has limited mobility or say for blind people, etc. So make sure your venue is accessible as possible, and that might be for where you put things in relation to each other, access, etc. So that's one thing sort of to look at, and also make sure your event is welcoming to all people across the whole of the spectrum. With LGBTQ plus, etc., that your event is welcoming to everybody. I think what we've got, or we're looking at, is we have a liaison that we're putting in place, a liaison officer for
Yeah. So if I take over here, what we're looking at doing going forwards, because I know this has been a hot topic in Furry as of late. Furcation are actually looking at starting a disability inclusion board. What we would like is we'd like to, well, not disability inclusion board, sorry, diversity inclusion board. I'll get it right. What we are looking to do is we're looking at people who are treated as sort of lesser or less equal than sort of, it's difficult to explain, but basically what we're looking for is we're looking for trans people, we're looking for BIPOC, we're looking for people with various disabilities to come and join this inclusion board so that they can help us as a steering committee to ensure that Furcation is meeting the needs of everyone that comes to attend Furcation. So this could be as simple as making sure that, you know, we're, as Pup's already alluded to, that we've got wheelchair accessible accommodation, that there are ramp accesses into all the clubhouse areas. It could even go down as far as, for example, in the fursuit lounge, most people put things like suites in the fursuit lounge for fursuiters to enjoy. There are people who need gluten-free diet. There are people who are vegan who can't maybe eat those sweets because they contain beef gelatin. I know big tubs of Haribo are typically a nice go-to for people because they're cheap, but if they contain gelatin in, vegetarians, vegans can't have them, and typically people who have gluten-free allergies or gluten allergy, sorry, can't have them either. So it's all about making sure that when you're doing research for what you want to put in your fursuit lounge, you're looking, there's a great website I found called Vegan All Sorts, and they do offer gluten-free, vegan-friendly sweets, and that way everything that we put on site we know can be had by anyone, anytime with no issue. I'll touch on this a little bit later as well because we've also been making some changes with John Fowler's over the years, so I'll let Pup continue with the next plans as well.
Yeah, basically, as I say, it's just as to reiterate that. Yeah, I think that's that on the inclusion. As I say, we just make sure that everybody is catered for, and if you have specific needs of people, basically do your research. Ask people what they need. Some people might not be as forwardcoming, so with the things that they want. So it's also in your feedback sessions, just make sure everybody's needs are catered for, and if there's anything they do require, ask them, like, do you require X, Y, and Z? And then see if you can put that in place. So that's basically, you know, from your feedback sessions, find out exactly what people need, and it might not be as visible to you what people need, but for some people, you know, if you ask them, they will tell you, and you think, oh, actually, yeah, we didn't think of that, and that's, you something to look at. So yeah, that's basically that's on that part. So would you like to do the next?
Yeah.
The next one.
So to bring back to where I mentioned about we've been having discussions with John Fowler's. So working with your venue is a very critical point. There's no point working with a venue that doesn't want to work with you. If they've got a set offering and they're not willing to change or be flexible on that, maybe it's time to start looking for a new venue. John Fowler's have been phenomenal. I can give an excellent example on this. When we first started with John Fowler's in 2016, one of the things that was brought up and one of the things I noted was the Chef's Corner at Combe Martin Beach. You had a wonderful menu of items, and then it was the token vegetarian option at the bottom, and it was just the one option. And if I remember, it was a pasta, it was a tomato-based pasta. We've had a lot of feedback from people saying it would be nice if the Chef's Corner could offer better options, and we have fed that back on to John Fowler's. Now, John Fowler's have been fantastic in that we've actually opened their eyes to a lot of new things that they can introduce, not just for us, but they've actually started doing this for their regular punters as well, because they hadn't really given much consideration to vegetarianism, veganism, people who need gluten-free diets. That was just things that weren't considered. And you may have started to notice from 2018 onwards that in the on-site shop, they started stocking more vegetarian and vegan foods. There was gluten-free options available at the shop. Not so much, unfortunately, in the clubhouse at that time because the Chef's Corner weren't quite prepared. But we also then had the pizza van that we brought on, which could do gluten-free pizza and vegan and vegetarian pizzas as well. That was agreed with John Fowler's because they knew that they weren't quite on that mark. 2019 was a change entirely, and when we got on site, we saw that the Chef's Corner had much more in the way of vegetarian and vegan options, and once again the shop was stocking far better options in terms of gluten-free food as well for attendees coming on site. And they've actually noted to us when we've had our sort of debrief meetings with them and when we've had our setup meetings for the following year, they've rolled this out with their regular punters, and it's reflected in their TripAdvisor reviews, and they've had positive feedback from people who have said it's nice to finally come to a caravan park where I can eat something that's on the menu. So it's opened their eyes. They're actually doing much better with their general trade and sales from it, and they've learned from feedback from our attendees. That is incredible as far as I'm concerned. That is something that I think we can hold our heads high on because, John Fowler's aren't exactly a big corporate chain. They've got a lot of parks, but they're still a very tight-knit, family-run business. And the fact that they have listened to us and they have helped us to move their own offering on has just been nothing short of phenomenal. So, this is a good example of a business who is willing to work with their customers to ensure that they're getting better outcomes, not just for us, but for them as well. So, absolutely, a venue that you can work with, they're rare, they're few and far between, but when you find them, hold on to them because they will, you and them, they will go far. Okay, so a final note on this for myself, and looking at the time, we may have time for a short Q&A session after this as well, but I just want to say that as staff members of the event, the one thing that we need to absolutely be prepared for in running any event, any meet, any convention is we need to be able to be held accountable for our actions, and we should be leading by example. Attendees will look to us to be setting the example of behaviors, of how we have professionalism, how we handle things, and they will be, if you treat yourselves and treat your attendees right, and you've got everything in place as it should be, those attendees will keep coming back and will enjoy themselves. A great comic that I've seen on the internet, and I'm sure a few of you may have seen this one, is the one with the lynx and the fennec at the convention. And the fennec is making a complaint about the convention, and the staff member turns around and says, well, if you don't like it, there are other events that you can attend. You don't have to be here. And the fennec screams, unprofessional. Now, That can be taken in two ways by different people. Some people will see the fennec as being a bit of a complainer, maybe a bit sort of ridiculous, just causing drama. But I like to see it that maybe the staff member was at fault because the staff member immediately put a wall up in front of them that said, we're not going to listen to the feedback. We're not going to listen to what you find wrong with our event. We're fine as we are, thank you very much. That is unfortunately a bit of a problem in convention management. It's very, very easy to put that wall up in front of you. I know because I've done it. We have done it, and we're learning not to do it. And it's a very difficult process to overcome, especially when you're starting out. You're a few years into running the event. You're finding your feet. There's a lot going on. So, it's all about flexibility, adapting to change. And essentially, that is what we are aiming for. So, if as a footnote from this, listen to your attendees, sympathise with that feedback. For that links one, even if it's something that that staff member couldn't have changed or was well out of their power, sometimes just an acknowledgement can go a long way. Something along the lines of, I agree you have a point, but right now, unfortunately, this is out of our control. I'd be happy to flag this to our management so they can discuss it with the venue or can discuss it internally for next time. Just acknowledgement, taking on board that you've heard what they are saying and actually do have that action about it. Ask if they would like to provide an email address to follow it up. Ask them if they would like to email in so that they can have a trail on it. It can diffuse a situation on site. It can potentially make that change happen once escalated within the organisation, and it's a far more professional attitude to take with much less drama.
Yeah, one of the best questions to ask if you get a complaint from someone about something you don't like, or they say, oh, this has happened, I'm never coming back. One of the best questions to ever ask is basically, what do you think we can do to change it, to put it right? And so you ask them what they think we should have done, or what do you think we should have done to change that, or what do you think we should have done to not make that happen in the first place? So you ask them, and then see what they say. And then if you can accommodate, their suggestions, that'd be a good thing to do so. So yeah, ask them, what do you think we should change? And then go from there. So that's one of the crucial questions to ask if you get any complaint at all.
Yep.
And then go from there. And they will appreciate that as well. Say, oh, actually, my opinion is actually being taken into account. They want to know what I think, and rather than just saying, oh, well, go somewhere else, they will go somewhere else. They will go to social media and go, but you'd rather have them going to social media and saying, oh, actually, I did have a problem, but I suggested something how they could fix it, and they listened to me. That's great. So you'd rather have that on your social media rather than say, oh, they didn't want to do anything for me. So ask them, how should we fix it? What do you think went wrong?
Okay.
And the best question.
I can see we've got around 10 to 15 minutes left on the clock at this point. So I think at this point I'm going to open to the Twitch floor.
Any questions?
Any questions? If you'd like to put them in the Twitch chat, I have my phone here so I can start reading these through. So I can see that, let me just quickly scroll back because obviously I've been talking, just to make sure that I've not missed any important questions. But it looks like the first question I've got is from CD Seadrugum. So, as the former organisers of Frantic Euphoria, how do you find the differences between running a proper con and a furry rave? How was that transition? In my opinion, it was a very big leap. Now, Frantic Euphoria did teach us a lot of things. One thing it taught us, again, is that we should walk before we run. With Frantic Euphoria, we somewhat ran straight away and somehow managed to make it work, and it was going well. But then we completely changed our format. We moved away from what our initial sort of founding principles were, and it didn't work out. Furcation was our second attempt, but I'd already at this point, I had my idea in my head. I knew what we wanted to do, and we have made sure to stick rigidly to that format, which is the running on the caravan site rather than taking it to a hotel, just giving attendees a completely different venue and a completely different scenario to any main other convention. Now, as we've scaled up, again, it's been a big learning curve. Starting out from 92 attendees to 592, I think it was, in 2019. That has not been an easy feat, and there have been times along the way where we have failed, but there are times along the way where we've also succeeded. And it's all about learning from your failures and growing on your successes. And I'm hoping that this is something that long may continue as we grow from here onwards as well. Would you like to add anything on to that?
Yeah, exactly. As I say, it was completely different from, from frantically fur to what we got now. But it did. There was a progression in. It was a similar. It was I had a similar base to it, i.e., it was finding a venue, organising an event, etc. So some of the fundamentals was already there. So it was a big leap, but you had experience in place that helped you with that as well. So yes, it was a progression, but a big leap as well.
We'll move it on just so we can make sure we can get as many of these in as possible.
Yeah.
Jana Dog asks, what is the biggest learning curve that we've had since running Furcation? That learning curve for me is going to be don't underestimate your attendee numbers. You can work on projection. It's very difficult when you first start out to work out just how many attendees are going to come along to your first event. And then when word of mouth starts to spread and other people start coming, I think our first to second year, if I remember, we jumped from 92 attendees year one to 217 in year two. I'd only projected for 150, 160 for year two, so we were hideously understaffed, and it made a very stressful weekend all around for our volunteers. So it's making sure that now when we're going into our growth stages that we are over-anticipating the growth and making sure that we've got all of the necessary resource in place so that the volunteers and the staff don't get burned out, and therefore that doesn't get projected onto the attendees.
Yeah.
Okay, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest learning curves is seeing what can go wrong and how you deal with it. So basically that comes with experience, but it's just trying to anticipate what can go wrong, and when it does go wrong, having things in place that will deal with that. I say you can never ever, one of the biggest learning curves is that you can never ever anticipate what can happen. So just be prepared for anything is the thing I think there.
Okay. Cosmos Nomu says here, what's the best example you have of turning an attendee's, it's just disappeared on my screen. What's the best example you have of turning an attendee's negative experience into a positive one? So a great example of this was 2019. Unfortunately, we'd had a bit of a miscommunication from John Fowler's over the size of one of their caravans. And someone had been sold a silver grade caravan that they were expecting a full-size caravan for, but when we got on site, it was a compact caravan, which meant they didn't have the separate lounge and dining space that they needed for other people staying with them, and the kitchen was all inclusive in one tiny little space. Now, they'd actually been to the venue, first of all, to the reception, and John Fowler's asked them to turn over to us as we were managing the accommodation side of things. And first of all, I just said to the attendee, would you mind awfully if I came along and had a look at this caravan for myself? And we jumped in the car, drove to the other end of the site, walked into the caravan, and I just immediately looked around and went, yeah, this ain't on. I understand why you're sort of feeling so frustrated. So I said, we'll go back to the venue, we'll see what they can do. Went back to John Fowler's, and I just said, look, what were these compact caravans? We didn't get any information on these, and it does seem like it was a miscommunication between them and us when we received our accommodation list. So they thankfully had managed to come up with a couple of spare caravans on site, which normally aren't rented out as John Fowler's part, because the caravan park has caravans owned by regular people as well as some owned by John Fowler's. And thankfully, they've managed to get a couple of their private owners to willingly put forward some keys to their accommodation for the weekend. So we took a couple of the keys, grabbed the attendee, went round a couple of the caravans. They selected which one they would like, and we got them moved over from this box of a caravan to a nice full-size unit for them. And they were really happy with that. And again, that was just listening to the attendee, realizing there is absolutely a problem with this, and then turning that round into a positive where we could get them moved into a much more suitable accommodation. Okay, let me just quickly read through. So Dragon Vanin says, as a volunteer at a non-fur event for the last 14 years, from experience, it's important for volunteers to not fall out with staff at the venues either. We had it once and we've nearly lost our venue as a result. Yeah, absolutely, I understand that. You've got to retain a good level of professionalism between you and your venue, and a good working relationship between you will go a very long way, and it's in absolute utmost importance to ensure that that relationship does not break down, especially over the course of your event. Okay, question from Ulfa. Is there anything that you could personally say to any convention organisers about listening to attendees? Well, I'm not going to name any other conventions because that would be just poor, but listening to attendees is critical. At the end of the day, you're making your event for a community of people who you want to come to your event. Making it for your staff or what your staff want, it may be good, it may turn out to be an accidentally a good event, but there will always be needs and requirements of your attendees that must be met. So listen to your attendees, don't just dismiss their concerns. It may be one person complaining, but that one person may well have a valid point that could be that game changer that you need. So 100% listen. Okay, Snep Style, what has been the single biggest challenge in all years running Furcation, excluding 2020 onwards? So 2016 to 2019, the single biggest challenge has been getting staff. That has actually been the hardest thing. The reason for that is because there are very few people that are willing to put all of their spare time, effort, blood, sweat and tears into running furry cons or furry events. It is a lot of work. It's often a thankless job. There's a lot of long nights, all-nighters pulled, and you know, it does put a lot of stress into into our volunteers running these events. Trying to get the right staff number and trying to find the right balance has also been equally difficult. But we also do like to say, if there is anyone who wants to staff an event, absolutely go and do it. It is one of the most rewarding experiences that I can actually say you can do in life, because don't do it for putting your name in lights, do it for the greater good. Do it for the attendees, and do it knowing that what you've done has made a difference and an impact in how that event or that convention has run. Be there, lead by example, and make that difference. Okay, let me just quickly scroll and make sure we've got anything else. Another question here from Jana Dog. Question, if you have time. How do you get volunteers and keep them motivated to be part of your event staff? So, hold on, sorry, I'm being sent something that I can barely read. It says, oh, we can overrun for questions. That's nice.
Okay.
Okay.
Got a few questions.
So, okay, we can take a few more questions if you wish. We're not exactly running out of time. Right, so back to this question. How do you get volunteers and keep them motivated to be part of your event staff? So, that is, again, something that we found very difficult with Furcation. You can get volunteers who can come on board. There are volunteers that will sometimes end up at loggerheads because they will have different opinions and different ideas on how things should be run. It's trying to manage that as best as you can to put forward the best solution for your event and for the attendees. So to keep them motivated, on Furcation, sometimes we've done social gatherings. There's times where we've been down to do site visits. We've tried to get as many people down to those site visits as possible. We've ended up having sessions where we've sort of just chilled out in a pool. 2018 was a great example of that, where I think we ended up, after doing a venue scout, we ended up with most of our staff chilling out in the pool and just having a really nice, lazy afternoon. There's all sorts of things that you can do. You can have staff come to visit you. You can have social nights. You can do gaming nights. Furcation, we've even done meditation. We've actually done meditation where it's been run over our own internal staff Discord. Everyone's got together and had a meditation session. The key thing is also making sure that as well as listening to your attendees, you're listening to your volunteers. Because again, volunteers can come forth with very good ideas and suggestions that you should be doing with your event. So not every idea is a bad one, and every idea should be given the time of day that it absolutely deserves, because there can be that one game changer in there that you may not have seen before, and you just need that second set of eyes to make you realize this would actually be a whole change for the event. Okay, I'm hoping I've not missed any questions at this point. If you've got any further questions that you'd like to put into the Twitch chat, please do so. Let me just have a quick read through. I just want to see if there's anything else. So Dennis Qualla's just said, I'd be very interested in joining the crew. How would I go about showing my interest? So showing your interest, basically what you'll need to do first of all is you'll need to work out what it is you want to do at the event. There are a lot of times where we've had people come to us and say, oh, I want to staff at the event. And you say, well, what would you like to do? Oh, I don't know, just give me a staff position. It doesn't work like that. We need to put you somewhere where you've got your knowledge, your understanding and experience. If you're very good at IT, for example, but aren't very good as an entertainer, there's no point us putting you in the events team. We'd rather have you on the IT and tech team. So if you're interested in joining the crew, we do have a recruitment section on the Furcation website. I think it's there at the moment. I will stand to be corrected on that if it's not, but it will definitely be there before the next physical event, because we do absolutely need to get new staff on for next year to ensure that we've got all areas covered. But make sure that what you're applying for, you have at least an interest in. You don't necessarily have to have experience. A lot of people on the Furcation staff team who have joined have never had experience at running these. They've done full trial by fire, come straight in the deep end. But it's all about making sure that you've got the interest in what you're doing, the passion for what you're doing. And if you've got the passion and everything, there we go, someone's put the recruitment link in for me. Thank you, Jana Dog. But yes, if you've got the passion and you know exactly what you want to get involved with, even just go through our staff list on the website, find the person who runs the team that you would most be interested in joining, have a chat with them over Telegram. Maybe even email the team. There are various things that you can do to show your interest, and we can arrange an interview, we can arrange to have a discussion with you, make sure that you're coming into this for the right reasons, that we're going to be the right fit for what you want to do, and then we will quite happily onboard you. Just to mention as well, a lot of people have used volunteering at Furcation and various other events to help springboard their career as well. There are people who've come out of university that, want to go maybe into film and television, haven't got the experience behind them, so they'll come and volunteer at the event, help us with AV, help us with video editing, help us with the photography side of things, build a portfolio, and we absolutely will allow the portfolio to be shared for that purposes to enable them to further their career. So yeah, it's well worth doing. Okay, I'm not seeing any, unless my phone has crashed, I'm not seeing any further questions at this point. So I think at this point we'll go for a wrap-up. But I'll just like to mention that if there are any questions that come to your head afterwards, you can reach me on Telegram at Jasper Foxx. I am also at Jasper Foxx on Twitter. I will be more than happy to field and take any questions that way. You can also email chairman@furcation.org.uk, and I will take any questions there as well. So hopefully this has been very useful for you. Hopefully it hasn't scared you off running your own event. But likewise, if you are interested in starting up your own event and you just want a bit of guidance, a bit of help, then feel free to hit me up. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, everyone.
Yep, thank you.